Hi guys, we're going to continue reading Harry Potter. Evil-looking masks leered down from the walls, an assortment of human bones lay upon the counter, and rusty spike instruments hung from the ceiling. Even worse, the dark narrow street Harry could see through the dusty shop window was definitely not Diagon Alley. The sooner he got out of here the better. Nose still stinging where it hit the earth, Harry made his way swiftly and silently towards the door. But before he got halfway towards it, two people appeared on the other side of the glass, and one of them was the very last person Harry wanted to meet when he was lost. Covered in soot and wearing broken glasses, Draco Malfoy. Harry looked quickly around and spotted a large black cabinet to his left. He shot inside it and pulled the doors to, leaving a small crack to peer through. Seconds later, a bell clanged and Malfoy stepped into the shop. The man who followed could only be his father. He had the same pale, pointed face and identical cold gray eyes. Mr. Malfoy crossed the shop, looking lazily at the items on display, and rang a bell on the counter before turning to his son and saying, "Touch nothing, Draco." Malfoy, who had reached for the glass eye, said, "I thought you were going to buy me a present." "I said I would buy you a racing broom," said his father, drumming his fingers on the counter. "What's the good of that if I'm not on a house team?" said Malfoy, looking sulky and bad-tempered. "Harry Potter got a Nimbus 2000 last year. Special permission from Dumbledore so he could play for Gryffindor. He's not even that good. It's just because he's famous. Famous for having a stupid scar on his forehead." Malfoy bent down to examine a shelf full of skulls. "Everyone thinks he's so smart. Wonderful Potter with his scar and his broomstick." "You've told me this at least a dozen times already," said Mr. Malfoy, with a look at his son, "and I would remind you that it is not prudent to appear less than fond of Harry Potter, not when most of our kind regard him as the hero who made the Dark Lord disappear. Ah, Mr. Borgin!" A stooping man had appeared behind the counter, smoothing his greasy hair back from his face. "Mr. Malfoy, what a pleasure to see you again," said Mr. Borgin in a voice as oily as his hair. "Delighted, and young Master Malfoy too, charmed. How may I be of assistance? I must show you just in today, and very reasonably priced." "I'm not buying today, Mr. Borgin, but selling," said Mr. Malfoy. "Selling?" The smile faded from Mr. Borgin's face. "You have heard, of course, that the Ministry is conducting more raids," said Mr. Malfoy, taking a roll of parchment from his inside pocket and unraveling it for Mr. Borgin to read. "I have a few, items at home that might embarrass me if the Ministry were to call." Mr. Borgin fixed a pince nez to his nose and looked down at the list. "The Ministry wouldn't presume to trouble you, sir, surely?" Mr. Malfoy's lips curled. "I have not been visited yet. The name Malfoy still commands a certain respect. Yet the Ministry grows ever so meddlesome. There are rumors about a new Muggle Protection Act. No doubt that flea-bitten, Muggle-loving person Arthur Weasley is behind it." Harry felt anger at hearing that. "And as you see, certain of these poisons might make it appear—" "I understand, sir, of course," said Mr. Borgin. "Let me see." "Can I have that?" interrupted Draco, pointing at the withered hand on its cushion. "Ah, the Hand of Glory," said Mr. Borgin, abandoning Mr. Malfoy's list and running over to Draco. "Insert a candle and it gives light only to the holder. Best friend of thieves and plunderers. Your son has fine taste, sir." "I hope my son will amount to more than a thief or a plunderer, Borgin," said Mr. Malfoy coldly, and Mr. Borgin said quickly, "No offense, sir. No offense meant." "Though if his school marks don't pick up," said Mr. Malfoy more coldly, "that may indeed be all he is fit for." "It's not my fault," retorted Draco. "The teachers all have favorites. That Hermione Granger." "I would have thought you'd be ashamed that a girl of no wizard family beat you in every exam," snapped Mr. Malfoy. "Ha!" said Harry under his breath, pleased to see Draco looked both abashed and angry. "It's the same all over," said Mr. Borgin in his oily voice. "Wizard blood is counting for less and less everywhere." "Not with me," said Mr. Malfoy. "No, sir, not with me, sir," said Mr. Borgin with a deep bow. "In that case, perhaps we can return my list," said Mr. Malfoy shortly. "I'm in something of a hurry, Borgin. I have important business elsewhere today." They started to haggle, and Harry watched nervously as Draco drew nearer and nearer to his hiding place, examining the objects for sale. He paused to examine a long coil of hangman's rope and to read, smirking, the card propped on a magnificent necklace of opals. "Caution, do not touch. Cursed. has claimed the lives of 19 Muggle owners to date. Draco turned away and saw the cabinet right in front of him. He walked forward. He stretched out his hand for the handle. Done, said Mr. Malfoy at the counter. Come, Draco. Harry wiped his forehead on his sleeve as Draco turned away. Harry almost got caught. Good day to you, Mr. Borgin. I'll expect you at the manor tomorrow to pick up the goods. The moment the door had closed, Mr. Borgin dropped his oily manner. Good day yourself, Mr. Malfoy. And if the stories are true, you haven't sold me half of what's hidden in your house. Muttering darkly, Mr. Borgin disappeared into a back room. Harry waited for a minute in case he came back, then quietly as he could slipped out of the cabinet, past the glass cases, and out of the shop door. Clutching his broken glasses to his face, he stared around. He had emerged in a dingy alleyway that seemed to be made up entirely of shops devoted to the dark arts. The one he just left, Borgin and Burke's, looked like the largest, but opposite was a nasty window display of shrunken heads, and 2 doors down a large cage was alive with gigantic black spiders. 2 shabby-looking wizards were watching him from the shadow of a doorway, muttering to each other. Feeling jumpy, Harry set off, trying to hold his glasses on straight and hoping against hope he'd be able to find a way out of there. An old wooden street sign hanging over a shop selling poisonous candles told him he was on Knockturn Alley. This didn't help, as Harry had never heard of such a place. He supposed he hadn't spoken clearly enough through the mouthful of ashes back in the Weasleys' fire. Trying to stay calm, he wondered what to do. Not lost, are you, my dear? Said a voice in his ear, making him jump. An aged witch stood in front of him, holding a tray of which looked like horrible human fingernails. She leered at him, showing mossy teeth. Harry backed away. I'm fine, thanks, he said. I'm just... Harry, what do you think you're doing down here? Harry's heart leapt. So did the witch. A load of fingernails cascaded down over her feet, and she cursed as the massive form of Hagrid, the Hogwarts gamekeeper, came striding towards them, beetle-black eyes flashing over his great bristling beard. Hagrid! Harry croaked in relief. I was lost. Flue powder. Hagrid seized Harry by the scruff of his neck and pulled him away from the witch, knocking the tray right out of her hands. Her shrieks followed them all the way down the twisting alleyway out into the bright sunlight. Harry saw a familiar snow-white marble building in the distance. Gringotts Bank. Hagrid had steered him right into Diagon Alley. You're a mess, said Hagrid gruffly, brushing soot off Harry so forcefully he nearly knocked him into a barrel of dragon dung outside the apothecary's. Skulkin' around Knockturn Alley. I don't know. Dodgy place, Harry. Don't want to see you down there. I realize that, said Harry, ducking, as Hagrid made to brush him off again. I told you I was lost. What were you doing down there anyway? I was looking for a flesh-eating slug repellent, growled Hagrid. They're ruining the school cabbages. You're not on your own? I'm staying with the Weasleys, but we got separated, Harry explained. I've got to go and find them. They set off together down the street. How come you never wrote back to me, said Hagrid, as Harry jogged alongside him. He had to take 3 steps to every stride of Hagrid's enormous boots. Harry explained all about Dobby and the Dursleys. Ruddy muggles, growled Hagrid. If I would have known. Harry, over here. Harry looked up and saw Hermione Granger standing at the top of the white flight steps into Gringotts. She ran down to meet them, her bushy brown hair flying behind her. What happened to your glasses? Hello, Hagrid. Oh, it's wonderful to see you 2 again. Are you coming into Gringotts, Harry? As soon as I found the Weasleys, said Harry. You won't have to wait long, grinned Hagrid. Harry and Hermione looked around. Sprinting up the crowded street were Ron, Fred, George, Percy, and Mr. Weasley. All right, we're going to stop there, and we will continue that tomorrow. Have a good one, guys.